Top 10 Youngest Murderers in the World. A number of child killings have been recorded throughout the years. These are not your typical childish crimes of stealing toys from a friend, or bullying a schoolmate. This is the list for the 10 youngest murderers in the world. Number 10. Eric Smith. At 13, Eric Smith was bullied because of his thick glasses, freckles, long red hair and one other quality: he had protruding elongated ears. Police charged Smith with the murder of a 4-year-old boy named Eric Roby. The younger child had been strangled, had large rocks dropped on his head and had been sodomized with a small stick. As of today, Eric is in prison for 6 years and has been denied parole 5 times. Number 9. Joshua Phillips. Joshua Phillips killed his 8-year-old neighbor named Maddie Clifton. Maddie Clifton was missing for 7 days. What's more shocking to his parents is that Joshua even volunteered to search for the missing girl. He was convicted and sentenced to life imprisonment, with no possibility of being freed. To this day, Phillips has not stated his motives for killing Clifton. He said he accidentally hit her in the eye with a baseball bat, and then dragged her to his room where he hit and stabbed her, but the jury did not believe his story. Number 8. George Stinney. George Stinney was the youngest person to be legally executed in the U.S. during the 20th century. George was convicted of the murder of 2 girls named Betty June Binnicker, 11 years old, and Mary Emma Thames, 8 years old, who were both found in a muddy hole. George confessed that he wanted to have sex with Betty but ended up killing the girls. He was tried and sentenced to death in the electric chair. Number 7. Lionel Tate. One night Lionel called to his mother and told her that the girl was not breathing. He explained that they had been wrestling and he had her in a headlock as he slammed her on the table. Authorities were called and a medical examiner reported that the cause of death was due to forceful stomping that lacerated the girl's liver. Tate was sentenced to a lifetime of imprisonment without parole in 2001, but he was released in 2004 with 10 years probation, because he was not given a mental competency hearing before, or during, the trial. Number 6. Berrydale Lucatus. Frontier Middle School was devastated by a hostage-taking incident and shooting spree that occurred in an algebra class. It took the lives of 3 people, 2 students and a teacher, and resulted in the critical injury of 1 student. The person accused was a 14-year-old boy named Berrydale Lucatus, who was experiencing delusional and messianic thoughts before the shooting. Barry is currently serving 2 life sentences, with an additional 205 years in prison. Number 5. Craig Price. Joan Heaton, 39 years old, along with her 2 daughters, Jennifer 10 years old and Melissa 8 years old, were found lifeless, blood-soaked and brutally murdered in their home by Craig Price during a burglary. They were stabbed so fiercely that the knife broke off in Melissa's neck. Police reported that Joan had approximately 60 stab wounds, while the young girls had approximately 30. Craig was tried and convicted before his 16th birthday, and is still in jail. Number 4. Graham Young. At an early age, Graham Young had been fascinated with chemistry, particularly types of poison and their effects on people. His family and friends were his victims. Young was caught by his teacher when he inspected his desk one night, suspected of the boy's experiment suggestion to the class. Young was sent to a maximum security hospital, but this did not stop him from poisoning hospital staff and fellow inmates, one of whom died. His knowledge was so broad that he could extract cyanide from laurel bush leaves. Young was released when he was 23 and went to live with his sister. His poisoning spree continued. His victims most often were co-workers. Young was sent back to prison and eventually died there. Number 3. Jesse Pomeroy. Jesse Pomeroy was referred to as the youngest person convicted of murder in the first degree, in the history of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Pomeroy started his cruel acts against other children when he was 11. He had taken and trapped 7 children in a hidden spot where he would strip, tie and torture them, by using a knife or by poking pins into their flesh. He was caught and sent to a reform school, where he was supposed to stay until he was 21. but was released after a year and a half for good behavior. After 3 years, he had changed from bad to worse. He kidnapped and killed a 10-year-old girl, named Katie Curran, and was also accused of the murder of a 4-year-old boy. He was sentenced to life imprisonment, which he served in solitary confinement. He died of natural causes at the age of 72. Number 2. John Venables and Robert Thompson. James Bulger's mother left her 2-year-old son at the butcher shop store thinking that it would not take her long to return, since there was no queue in the store. Little did she know that it would be her last time she would see her son alive. John and Robert, who were at the same mall as the Bulgers, came up with an idea to have a little boy get lost outside so that he would get knocked over by a vehicle. During their 2-mile walk, the 10-year-old boy's head punched, kicked, picked up and dropped James on his head. The 2 boys also flung paint in James' left eye, threw stones at him, beat him with bricks, and hit him with an iron bar. They also sexually assaulted him and laid his body on the railroad track, covering his bleeding head with bricks when they thought he was dead. It was reported that James died sometime before the train hit him. Number 1. Mary Bell. Mary Bell strangled to death 2 little boys in Scotswood. Mary's family background may be responsible for her unusual behavior. Mary claimed that her mother, Betty, who was a prostitute, had forced her to engage in sexual acts with men, particularly her mother's clients, at the age of 4. Her mother repeatedly sold Mary's story to the press at the time of her daughter's conviction. Mary was only 11 at that time. She was released after 23 years and fought and won the case for both her own anonymity and that of her daughter. This order is consequently known as a Mary Bell Order.